Norm Scott, my brother from another mother. My dude from another brood.
It's great to be here. This is fun already. We've been at it for half an hour already before we're rolling, and
So we better save the good stuff, man.
yeah.
It's I don't think it really works like that, but there's something to be said about approaching, circling into, or coming into something the first time together, rather than circling back the second time you talk about it. It's a little different.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's kind of nice that we're still steaming hot right now.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Thanks as always to our amazing camera aficionado, Bob Hutko back there running the switcher, and thanks for the coffees too, Bob.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
From Press Bay Alley Press Cafe. After this episode, we'll expect free coffees, hopefully.
That's a good. Yeah, you need. There you go. Product placement.
It's always such a funny thing, like the idea of like monetizing art, and you see how shameless some spaces are with it. And then we were just talking about not even wanting to promote yourself or feeling weird and icky about it. So that's interesting. How's that going for you right now?
What, the self-promotion
Yeah.
piece? Or, well, we were talking before. I have an art show coming up at the Cherry Gallery.
You're doing it!
January 31st to March 9th, with an opening on the 31st from 5 to 7, which I hope, well, I guess you won't be around, so I'm hoping to get you in there before to see it. But, interestingly, they're putting together promotional materials for that, and I'm sort of waiting to sort of start kind of blasting things out there. But I always feel like this is the thing that happens to me every time, is that it's like I don't want to spoil the surprise too much of whatever it is I'm working on.
Yeah.
So I kind of hold back a little bit on sharing kind of in progress stuff as I go, which is weird because I love seeing other people doing that. I love that's almost as interesting or more interesting in some ways than the final thing. Is like, well, how did they build this thing, and I'd love to see them just kind of in the studio with the half built thing, drilling holes and putting the screws in, and watch that.
It's delicate because I think sometimes when you have art like that, the surprise is part of the effect.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you keep too much, then you're missing out on another leg of the journey, and then maybe not even creating the buzz that the project deserves.
Right.
And how do you do that? Especially like you were just saying, you're like so busy doing the thing.
Right.
And I'm not sure if that means that you're tweaking bolts down to the last minute before the doors open, or just if you're heads in the which it should be as the artist. Your job is to make the art. It is a little weird that artists have to do all those jobs, promote themselves, fund themselves,
until you make it big, and then you just hire. Make it big. You hire a team to do all that. I always think about like YouTubers and stuff, and I've always, at some point, not so much anymore, but I wanted to have a YouTube channel and post tutorials and things, and you document like the things I'm working on as I am doing it. But then I'm like, well, you have this whole second job now, being a videographer and an editor.
Right.
And to me, just the idea of like, well, every time I want to drill a hole, I'm supposed to set my camera up on a tripod and frame the shot and stuff, and then drill the holes. Like I'd never get the thing done.
It's weird. It really. I mean, like having a camera person would be nice.
Right.
I've done that on a few carpentry projects where I'll have. I'll like, okay, I'm gonna build a bed, and I'm going to make a video of me building the bed, and I'll have to stop and remember. Or that's building a bed. That is a creative thing, and I do take on kind of a persona for that. That's a little bit like, hey. I don't know. It's not, but
right.
When you're making art, it's like there's this this part of your brain that kind of becomes active, and when you're switching gears to other things, it can interfere with the waves that you're going for.
Yeah. Well, I feel like too. I don't know what percentage, 40% at least for me is literally pacing, doing like this, put my hand on my chin and like just staring at stuff. And a lot of initially the stuff I was building that's going in this show was at the Beyond workshop, which for the viewers out there is a very cool arts collective.
Agreed.
In Ithaca that's done some pop-up immersive things, kind of in the vein of the Meow Wolf collective that's based out in New Mexico, and which you were involved with that as well.
I was, yeah. There was a nice push in some meetings right before COVID where it was kind of coming into this fruition. Doug Shire, Shrek was a part of that. Lawrence, Judy. And it's like kind of like this Burning Man inspired, Meow Wolf inspired, which I'm sure Meow Wolf was inspired by Burning Man in turn. And like there's this DIY element, which is like a new take on art. And the Meow Wolf story was so cool. Like we watched that movie at Doug's house right before in it. And they said so many things that stuck with me. One of them was like that no one else would have them. They were kind of the rejects of Santa Fe. Because Santa Fe is a fine art place. And they were like, you get enough rejects together, it's like mercury. It starts to pool. And I've been in different communities and times and spaces where things the tinder starts to catch, starts to smoke, and magic starts to happen. You have a party, and everyone's so creative, and everyone's so supportive. And I guess it had a critical mass. And then somewhere along the way, the Game of Thrones dude came into the mix and funded a bowling alley, was it?
Yeah, it was the first one. And they've got 6 or 7 of them all over the country now, I think. But the first one in Santa Fe was in an old bowling alley, and which I've never been still, but it's a house that they built in the bowling alley that you go in the one structure, and then I think from there you go into the house, and it kind of looks at first like you're just in a house, but then you open the dryer and there's like a slide that goes down into a neon wonderland, or you open the fridge and there's like a tunnel you crawl through and you come out into a Stegosaurus skeleton where you can play the bones and make songs. And this is all just based on what I've seen and heard, but it's on my list. But
would that be fun?
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of what we were aspiring to make in Ithaca, and it's kind of had ups and downs with COVID and different things happening, but it's but meanwhile there's this workshop out there where we can work on things, and things are stored, like Sparky, the giant rideable neon unicorn
that Paris Hilton once upon a time donned.
I saw that.
I can't think of Sparky without thinking of Paris Hilton at this point.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I would imagine I wonder how many people total have actually ridden around on Sparky, because it's quite and it's kind of an Ithaca icon at this point too. She's made an appearance at different Ithaca events.
At the parade. I believe Mickey Quinn rode that one year at the beginning of the parade. Yeah, that's a good question. How many people have been on that? It'd be nice to have like a little clicker counter on the ladder, and then every time make sure to push the button and keep track.
Yeah, or like a live video feed would be kind of cool, like a Sparky cam.
Oh wow! Now we're talking.
But so Sparky, like I think even as we speak, is kind of disassembled and kind of off in the workshop. And to kind of circle back to what I was talking about was that as I was working on these sculpture installation things for the show, I was out in the workshop a bunch, and there was a period where I was spending probably out of maybe 3 or 4 hours being there at night, a good hour and a half, I bet, just staring.
That's your
pacing,
creative,
staring,
your creative zone.
Thinking.
They say that it's on the edge of boredom. There's some kind of like magic there, but there's there's a passivity to that, to the discovery process sometimes. I guess everyone has their own thing, but I think I know what you're talking about. A lot of chin scratching and whatnot, and just not knowing and wondering and looking at things different angles. I like to hold stuff up.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
See how it fits. Oh my God, that could be a.
Yeah.
That old part from that washing machine could be a.
Exactly. Right. And that's my work is like a lot of found objects are a big piece of it. So it is kind of like, well, I've got this thing, a dresser, and I know one of the things, for instance, is a smell machine.
Like how you said that so serious.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that.
Which I built originally like 25 odd years ago, and most of it got dismantled, but I kept the key elements, which were cast aluminum pieces, these horns that the smells blow out of, and then these little bionic nose unit things that are like part of the control panel that's supposed to be what processes the air to create the smells that blow out of the machine. And that's all I had left, and so I was rebuilding it from the ground up. And another big piece of what I'm doing usually is going to like Ithaca Reuse and just looking at stuff and being like, you know. And I knew wanted a base thing that I wanted to build the new smell machine around, but I didn't know what. So I would just go in and just kind of be like, okay, I'm gonna. Sometimes I don't know if you've ever done this, but like I'll put my hand out and feel for like heat.
Wow.
And if I feel a hot spot, you know, I walk towards it to see if there's something.
I don't do
there.
that.
Every now and then, yeah. And it works sometimes, you know, or if I'm trying to find something, sometimes I'll, you know.
The way I do it's a little different. I know that feeling. I'm looking for something today. I'm looking for something special. But you don't know exactly what it is, you know?
Yep.
And I'll like kind of meditate in the car and magnetize and create that that pull. And then when I walk into the store, I just go in like it's so epic. I'm like, open the door. I'm like, here, I know what's in here. And the other part of that for me is like being prepared to leave with nothing.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to settle unless it's the right thing. Because you can easily buy shit every time you go in and you just accumulate and waste money and waste time.
And I do some of that to be sure, but and I feel disappointed when I leave the Reuse and I don't have something, you know. And I go in at least twice a week, usually more, but that's true though, because you know, and there's actually one particular thing I wanted to put in the show that I'm probably not going to do it because I couldn't. The thing has not presented itself to me. That's kind of the missing element. And some other factors too, but with the smell machine, I found this like dresser basically that I was like, oh, this is, and I started to be like, okay, the smell horns can go on each of kind of where the drawers are, and there's this thing here where the control panel can be, and there's a whole thing up top, like something can go there, but I don't know what, and so I got it, and then, you know, sure enough, in the workshop, I would I have a bunch of stuff stored there, little glass domes and dials and gauges and, you know, little electronic thingies and old radios. And so I'd be like, okay, I'm just going to set a radio here and I'll put a couple of glass things up there and see how that looks. And so a lot of just kind of, just seeing like, well, what do different things look like if I put them there? And I'd be like, no, that's not quite doing it for me. And just eventually it just kind of builds itself in a way.
Yeah.
You know,
well, that was the other thing that they said in the Meow Wolf documentary that really stuck in my head was that it took on a life of its own. That Meow Wolf became almost like an entity. It was an idea that wanted to come to fruition, and it eventually starts to kind of arrange its own unfolding, and it steers people around it, and it reveals itself. It shows you what it is. And I think that's really cool. That was like a way that artists used to look at art more like the idea of the muse or the genie. Like you've heard of that thing with the genie. Like a lot of times in the West, they'll say he's a genius, but that harkens back to a time where they said that person has a genie with them, which was considered to be like a spirit.
I never thought of that, like kind of linguistic connection of genius and genie. Yeah,
it was like a spirit muse that would guide you. But you know, they say like that was also a time where people saw art as something that came through someone. And now in the West, because of our hyperinflated sense of ego, it's like, I'm the genius. I am the, I did this. Yeah. But there's something to be said about just saying that it came through you or that it showed you and you were there.
I mean, it's both, too. It's not just like, it didn't actually build itself. I mean, I spent a lot of time drilling holes and I like to drill holes. I should add. I've been putting together these, bio things, written marketing materials for the cherry, and one of the things that kind of came out was that drilling holes is actually like a thing I do a lot and I really like, and it's almost a sort of a meditation practice in a way.
I love the way that you're describing this right now. I can't tell. I know you're being serious.
Yeah,
but it's also like, wow, there's like probably so many layers to like. Can you pinpoint what it is about drilling holes that gets you going?
I don't know, actually.
Is it in wood specifically or anything?
No, anything really. Metal too. Metal actually is satisfying. Aluminum in particular.
With the shavings.
It does, yeah. That thing that comes up out
the
of
squiggles.
it. Yeah. But it's not just the holes, but because I'm usually drilling them to fasten things, and I also kind of ideologically, I don't like glue and epoxy and stuff like that. And people are always saying like, oh, you can just epoxy that on there, and I'm like, no, I want to like attach it with a bolt and a nut or a screw. Even screws are kind of but like I think the whole thing of drilling a hole between two things and putting the bolt in and the nut on it is, I'm gonna have to think about that a little bit of why I like that. But there's a zen to it that kind of especially when you've got 30 of them to do, then you just kind of, you're like, it's a little like, I don't know, I'm going to have to chew on that, I think. I'm glad you asked me that because it's...
I can relate. That's why I'm wanting to go there with you. I was recently doing some stuff in a wood shop, and I was making basically like something you would put a towel on. It's like for this nice lady at my spot, and I had some cherry and I cut it down, and then I sanded it really, really nice. That's something I like to do is sand.
Yeah, all right.
It was like a bench sander, and it was like, it turned it into glass, this old dense cherry. And then I kind of like vice gripped the cherry plaque onto a drill press, and then used the drill press, which is a whole nother fun level of satisfying.
Yeah.
Because it's it's on the axis that you want, and and you can just go as deep as you want. Because when you're holding a drill, it can be a little bit like, woo,
Right.
So I was really enjoying the drill press. And then like I did like multiple sizes. So I would like drill the hole for the thing, and then I pounded the dowel in there, and then I did the screw holes. So I'm pre-drilling because I don't want to split the wood. And that might be part of the fascination too, is like the whole idea of pre-drilling is like multiple steps of intention that create this effect of really like, this is intentionally secured. It's not just half-assed glued on there or taped on there.
Right. Yeah,
or
it's
nailed
not coming loose.
It's in there. You did that.
Yeah, maybe that's part of it is that it's like a stability and like a permanence and like like sort of a confidence or something that it's probably not, the thing about glue is that it's like it works great until it doesn't, and then it's just whereas with a bolt, I mean, it's unless the bolt just breaks or something, it's really not coming off. But like, it's kind of funny that I haven't really given. See, that's what this is kind of what this is about, though, right? I think is like asking those questions and then being like, all right, now I get to think about this new ideology of like the zen of drilling holes.
I'm the kind of guy, I've done enough psychedelics where I always go, what does it mean?
Right.
What is it? Like there's always another layer. It represents, it's a symbol, and it represents an aspect of self or of the human experience. And I always like to kind of get to the bottom of it. So because then you can access that more intentionally and find other ways in your life into where that will. So one of my fetishes that's in the same kind of fetish.
Oh, I didn't know this was that kind of.
Yeah, I like to get it warm with. Now we're drilling holes, baby.
Yeah, I wasn't even gonna go there with the. Yeah.
Is. Because I have a lot of gear, like you have probably a lot of gear too, like musical equipment, and then I'll go do a gig and stuff. So whenever I'm transporting my gear, it needs to be in a case.
Oh, okay.
It needs to be protected because I love this gear, and I love when it fits in the case perfectly. I'll go find the right case for something, or maybe like 2 pieces of gear will fit into it, and I'll cut out the foam a certain way, and then it all sits in there, and then I'm putting my gear away or packing for a show or after the show, and it all slips in there, and I close the case. Woo!
Yeah.
That's my thing.
Man. See, I'm the opposite, actually. I mean, I'll literally just pile stuff in the car seat and which in a way there's a kind of an aesthetic to that too, but I can totally identify though with, things fitting into a case and putting it down and clamping those little, and that's, I think I understand that kind of satisfaction, but maybe in other kind of ways in my own life. But
I think
I don't protect my stuff well at all, but I don't. I'm not really like a gigging musician either, so I don't. I'll take things. I do mobile recording and that kind of thing sometimes. So I mean, literally yesterday I did a thing, and I did have a bin, like a plastic bin, but everything was just kind of piled in the bin.
Oh, bins are like the mobile junk drawer. You just throw it all in the bin, and
I mean, it kind of works, and then you get it home and you can redistribute it. And I was moving it this morning, and the bin actually cracked. It started to break because it was so heavy. Because that's the advantage of a nice case, right? Is that you really can kick it around and not have to worry. And maybe if we're going to get into the deeper meaning of things, maybe it's a type of self-sabotage or something on my part that I don't always protect my gear
as I
could.
Has it gone downhill in a way that, like, you ever had something fail on you prematurely due to neglect, and you?
I mean, not really. No, that's the funny thing is that because I think if I thought it was really going to affect the functionality of it significantly, I'd probably pay more attention to it. What it does do is it beats things up, and things have scratches on them, and knobs sometimes come off, I feel it's kind of the same with like books and records. For me, vinyl records that I I kind of have this ideology that you want to. It's like getting your hands dirty. That if your records don't have some scratches on them, and your books don't have like some coffee spills and stuff, and it might mean that you're not getting in there or something.
I can dig that too, my guy. I can dig that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is kind of I don't know if that's. I'm not too sure about that one in a way, but there's something that just feels like I just don't. I at the beginning of the pandemic, I got into modular synthesis and started getting modules and stuff. And I guess it's the same with like rack gear, that they always talk about rack rash. Like where I guess when you put the things into your rack with screws, unless you use nylon washers and stuff, it'll make this little thing on there, and I always read about it. They're like, oh, no rack rash on this module, and I'm just like, man, like,
who gives that?
Yeah, like what? Yeah. Like It's just funny to me to think that, and I'm like, no, there should be rack rash on there. It means you're like tightening those screws in, and you're like patching things, and you're like, it's kind of like I don't know, like a wildness or something that's kind of captured that.
I can dig that. I think especially, instrument. I think of instruments. A guitar should have some marks on it. You're out there playing it, and I don't think I would never really want to per se own a guitar that's too nice to play.
Right.
Like, it would be kind of cool if I had like one of Prince's guitars in a case, and I probably would take it out and play it. And I would probably want to do that when I've been drinking, and I probably shouldn't do that when I'm drinking. But I don't own Prince's guitar, so that's all hypothetical. But like everything that I have, I use, and if I don't use it, I try to get rid of it. And I typically don't have like really nice things that I'm like, oh, don't touch that.
Right.
What came to mind to me was like a Pokemon card, and you get like a and then it's like you put it in the thing and you can't bend the corners. And
Yeah,
it's like, yo,
or like Star Wars figures, you know.
Yes, it's better in the
like
case,
in the box.
It's like, but you can't play with it.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of insane to me that that you would have like a whole collection of toys that you wouldn't play with, you know, but you know, I don't know.
That's its
Not my
own
thing.
weird thing. It's like not drilling holes at all. It's like, you know, like wanting things new in the package, or like, and there was a thing too with like around hats, like leaving the sticker on it. Do you remember that?
Oh, kind of, yeah, yeah.
This is
There
new.
was a Key and Peele sketch about that. Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Or not the sneakers, or whatever. But a shoe is for
Right.
walking.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Well, and that's sort of, it comes down to two of like form over function or function over form. And I'm definitely like, which is funny because I make art things that are obviously there's a formal aspect to it, but in most other ways I'm a function over form person, and that I just kind of want a thing to do the thing it does, and it doesn't really matter if it's kind of beat up or, and you know, and then you can save a lot of money too buying beat up stuff online when you know, like, well, it works. I don't care what it looks like. And I got this really cool like a Soviet drum machine thing. It's called a Marsh UDS, and it's really fun. And I'm into this music called squee. Have we talked about this? Or,
No.
It's like this Scandinavian electro funk video game music that people mainly in like Sweden and Finland were making kind of in the early 2000s, and I don't think people are really
Is it
producing it as
24-bit
much.
style stuff, like lower fidelity, or like?
Not really, but it's the thing I heard of why they call it squee is that they would have like old synthesizers and things that weren't worth that much, and they would try to squeeze like as many sounds out of them as they could. And I'll play you sometime. Yeah,
This is
for
like
sure.
like a niche genre.
I guess
Squee.
so, and I just found it on SoundCloud, I think, you know, and I was like, wow, and I started really getting into it, like buying vinyl records and stuff, but I don't remember where I was going with that. What was I-
About you could save money by getting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So this Marsh UDS thing that I'd seen some squee artist mentioning it, and you know they were a little kind of pricey to get in good shape, which ironically they weren't.
Right.
They were kind of pricey at first, then they were junk, and now they're, you know, like 808 drum machines were like that they were just kind of, you know, for a while you could find one in a thrift store, maybe in the 90s for $10.
It became
And
iconic
now,
way after.
like $3,000 now to
Yeah.
get like or more to get a. But I finally found a Marsh UDS that was fairly beat up and affordable, and it worked fine. So I got it, and works great.
I'm like that too. I don't mind getting something that's beat up. My favorite guitar actually is a Taylor I got at Guitar Works, and I was looking at all the guitars. I rarely, almost never buy a new guitar. I'm like totally. I'd rather just take that that nut that I have and put that towards something that's used and still good. And this Taylor, I could never have afforded it if it wasn't in the condition that it's in. It's like it would have been like a $5,000 guitar new. It would be worth like $3,500 or so used, but it's just been destroyed. And I love it.
Right.
And I don't feel bad about spanking it and getting it out and playing it. I love that. You know. Now I will say this: like I have like a beach guitar that I'll bring to the beach, and like if it's like drizzling or it's like, out in the sun, or a little sand gets on it.
Right.
That's my beach guitar. I don't bring my really nice guitar to the beach.
Yeah.
But I also don't keep things in cases hidden away in the back of the closet. Like if I have it, I'm playing it.
Yeah. Man, that's cool. I want to see these guitars. I want to hang out with you on the beach sometime.
I feel like I'm talking about
Check out your
myself
beach
too much.
guitar.
I'm sorry.
No, it's a conversation, right? It's not. I was telling my kid Lincoln about that I was doing this, and at first he said it was like an interview, and he was just kind of what are you an interview? Like what is this? And I said, well, it's not an interview. It's a conversation really about like anything.
Yeah.
It was kind of abstract to explain it to him, so it's not like you're interviewing me in a job interview, like, Oh, he likes robots and synthesizers.
Yeah,
You're hired.
Like, what are we doing here? Like, what are we doing here?
When you mentioned this the first time, I didn't really understand. Like, we talked about just sort of like a hang, and like let's see what each other's up to, and we were talking earlier before we were taping of sort of like that we've crossed paths 100 times over the last 6-7 years, and I would say notably, right, and maybe at the Cosmic Creek camp out was probably the time we maybe actually hung out the most. But for the most part, we haven't really hung out a lot. It's more kind of seeing each other in passing and always having a lot of fun, but not really. We don't know each other like that great. And there's tons of interesting things that we in our past and in our present that we're. So I'm kind of seeing this as much as anything else is just kind of like a hang.
We're getting to know each other a little bit.
So
yeah,
it's cool.
We do have a lot of amazing mutuals, and
yeah.
I think just by virtue, have you been to Burning Man?
I've not been to the Big Burn.
One.
I went to Cosmic Creek and I went to Portal Burn last summer for the first time. We could talk about that some because it was amazing.
Great.
Not at all what I expected either, in a good way.
Yeah. It's hard to even.
That I was bad. I was expecting bad, but it was a totally different.
Yeah.
Experience than
But just to say, anyone who has been to a burn, at a burn, making art for a burn, or hangs out with burners, there's already something that's you have a lot in common right there.
Uh-huh.
Even though there's a lot of diversity at any burn, lots and lots and lots and lots. But there's just something that we have in common through the circles that we move in.
Mm-hmm.
And also like through art, like, I've been around your art, you've been around some of my art, some of curated experiences, and whether you see that online or you're there in person, that you can learn a lot about someone through their art. So you can kind of feel like you know someone. Like I feel like I could spend hours talking to someone, or I could spend 15 minutes maybe doing a little music with them, or doing something creative, or a build. I love building with people. Like if we had to build like a treehouse. By the end of it, we're like best friends. I know you inside and out, because we built it together.
Yeah.
There's just something about that expedites the process.
Yeah. That was, a couple of times I can remember hanging out with you were like at the Beyond Workshop working on, like the Time Blender. I remember one time you rolled up and just kind of like busted out of your vehicle with this big ass like JBL boombox thing with something blasting on it, and just kind of rolled in and we were building the Time Blender, which is basically building like a freestanding hexagonal room, framing it, and that was a lot of the Beyond stuff was like that, where you're collaborating with all these people, and it's like you're working on these things that some of which is just almost kind of grunt work, like framing walls for a thing isn't what you typically think of as like a creative piece of the art process, but but there's so much camaraderie with that, where you come out just in the process of drilling holes and screwing screws in and stuff, you're talking to people and just kind of learning things,
It's incredible. I've been to a lot of festivals. I've been to 6 big burns and about, I think I've been to 14 regionals.
Okay. What
regionals?
Yeah.
So I've been to Portal.
Burn, yeah.
I've been to CoZmic.
Yeah,
I've been to Love Burn like 3 or 4 times in Miami, which I love.
I want to check that one out. Yeah.
So
everyone
good.
speaks highly of it.
I've been to some North Carolina ones, some Hawaii ones.
Yeah.
Wow. Yep.
So it wasn't really it was kind of on my radar a decade ago or so that I first heard of Burning Man, probably, but especially especially when I was a new parent, it was just sort of like, I didn't want to really go on any sort of long trips anywhere really until I kind of locked in, and it was really when I met with the Beyond people that it was back on my radar again.
Wow. It kind of reached you through other people through circles.
Yeah, and it was one of these things that I was like, oh, okay, I all these people seem to be, I would say almost everyone involved with Beyond in some way is probably locked into the Burning Man thing at
Some
some
people
point.
just are burners.
Right.
And
Well,
I could say that about you even.
Yeah, that's kind of yeah, I know exactly what you mean, and it was kind of like, oh, I identify with all these people, and which is what was funny was when I went to Portal Burn that I kind of, like that was the piece of it that I was expecting to really be like the highlight was like, meeting all these like-minded people, you know, and which it was a highlight, but there was this other like emotional component to it that was totally unexpected for me.
Tell me more about that. Like cathartic or
Yeah, I guess
being
so.
seen or
Yeah, I don't know about being seen. Well, kind
being
of.
part of something.
I mean, there was a specific thing that I did that it was Doug and Angelina. Do you know Angelina?
Angelina's not
from
ringing a bell.
Binghamton.
Oh yes,
Yes.
yes, tutus.
The ridiculate, I think she calls it. It's a whole ideology of embracing like silliness, basically.
Okay.
She has a TED Talk somewhere online about it, but it was a Marry Yourself workshop, and I thought it sounded kind of silly, you know, and I was like, oh, this sounds kind of silly and fun, and I'm going to do this, and so I'm there, and it kind of starts, and Doug's playing this sort of wedding music, you know, and I almost immediately started feeling just emotional. And I was like, but I didn't understand like why at all. And then they're like, okay, we're going to do this thing, but before we all marry ourselves, we're going to divorce ourselves from like the things that don't serve us. And I immediately felt like a little uncomfortable. And I was like, oh,
a divorce too? Oh, yeah.
Well, it wasn't about the divorce piece as much as that I realized it was like, oh, this isn't just a silly thing. It's
Right.
like a introspective thing. And I was like, I thought this was going to be silly. And it's not, you know, and so the idea of
Caught you off guard a little bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know, and but then I kind of recognized this discomfort as like, like that, you know, like I need to push through this, like the fact that it's making me feel a little uncomfortable was sort of like meant even more so I need to do this. So we wrote our vows. The whole thing was that first people talked about, you know, things they wanted to divorce themselves from. Then we had to write vows down. And then we all kind of exited, and they played the wedding march. We all walked down the aisle and sat down, and Angelina did a ceremony. And then she said, can you come up and read your vows? You know, and she said, you know, you don't have to read all of it. You don't have to read any of it, but I'd like it if you came up anyway and even just stood here and just kind of sit with them for a second. And so it was my turn, and I went up, and I was like, well, I was kind of thinking about, do I want to read all these? And they weren't really vows; they were more like just thoughts that popped in my head.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to read them, and I just started just crying.
Wow!
Like, and then I felt really like, for a second, like really, you know, super vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I kind of looked over at Angelina, and she just kind of looked at me like, you know, like go on, you know, this is, and I just kind of, you know, and there were all these people like looking at me, you know, and I was
Crying
kinda,
in front of people. You weren't planning
you know,
that.
and it was, just intense, you know, and finally I like got my vows out, and I sat back down, but the piece that was really kind of amazing to me was that for the whole rest of the weekend, people were coming up to me and like sort of congratulating me.
Wow.
On like wow, that was really, you know, brave. And I was like, wow, you know, there was something about that was, it was just powerful. And then that
You inspired people. You gave them permission to feel what they were. I mean, that's the thing about being vulnerable is it inspires other people to do the same thing. Because in a way, vulnerable is authentic.
Right.
It's real. Mm-hmm. It's like I'm gonna let my guard down and stop pretending like I'm something and just gonna be how I am. And crying is something, especially for men, it obviously has been forbidden for such a long time.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. I'm really glad that you had that experience. And it sounds like Angelina, I know that feeling too. Like at Burns, you think you're going into something that's this way, but there's all these other things in it that are very important and powerful that you weren't expecting.
Yeah.
And what comes up also, like you said, that you were kind of having like almost like a cathartic release just from the music and stuff. Like,
right.
But you're like, what's going on here? Like, I don't know what's going on.
And I still don't really know, like, what, because I thought, I think part of what was interesting too was that I kind of came away from it feeling like I didn't actually need to process it intellectually. And I didn't need to really think, like, well, what was it that happened there? Or, like, what? And it's like it was enough to just kind of, for it to happen and not intellectualize it or, explain it.
I'm on board with that. No need to, cause in a way, like, it is what it is, right? And it was valuable and beautiful, and it touched other people, too. So it wasn't just for you. It was a group thing. But to go back and intellectualize it could be almost like to disrespect it in a way, to be like, you could, like, diminish it by doing that. There's something to be said about just allowing it to be beautiful and mysterious. I've replayed some of my Burning Man adventures, some of my things that happened that are similar, unexpected moments of powerful emotional things that I could replay. I could frame by frame this encounter with this person that I met or something, and a lot of times there was medicine involved.
Right.
And the art's there for that. The art is in a lot of ways designed to catalyze that kind of stuff. When I think of Burning Man specifically, like if there was like a unifying theme of Burning Man, there's many principles which all have value, like radical self-expression or like immediacy is a powerful principle. My life changed once I applied.
It's my favorite one, actually.
It's so good. it's like the kryptonite to procrastination. I'm gonna do it right now. Oh my God. Thinking about calling my mom. Where's my phone at?
That's the thing is because so how do you take it into real life? And that was the thing that I really wasn't sure about, and still am not exactly of like, well, I've got, when I left, I was, and interestingly, I was going to like a funeral right after that. Wow. So, which I think probably colored the whole thing in that way too. And I literally drove like straight there, all dirty and, and,
with your
and just kind of like, but yeah, I was kind of like, I really want to carry this feeling forward somehow,
Forever.
And I felt like I was kind of able to for a while, and then it kind of faded a little bit, and then I thought probably the key is just to keep plugging back in regularly to that, if not that community, and then some kind of a similar thing, and even this in a way kind of has like a feel of
absolutely
of like plugging into a connection.
It informs everything that you do, Burning Man. Once you internalize. So having gone to 20 burns, the last one I went to, the last big one I went to was really wild. I went for 2 weeks total. Oh, wait, yeah, I was there for maybe it was 3 weeks total. I was there for almost an entire week before, and then an entire week after.
Oh wow!
I was with the foam camp, the Bronner's camp. Huge amount of infrastructure. Huge amount of people. We had Alex and Allison Gray, Guayaki Mate. We had Tipper, the DJ, camping with us. And we had, most notably, Zendo and Maps camping with us. I mean, Paul Stamets was at our camp. And I was talking to him in the lunch line, and I was like, this guy seems familiar. And I was like, oh my God, it's Paul Stamets.
I don't know who that is, actually.
He's like the leading mycologist, one of the big mushroom guys.
Okay.
Really influential. And MAPS is the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, headed up by Rick Doblin and some other people. Okay. And it's like, and Zendo is a part of that, which is psychedelic harm reduction, and then psychedelia interfacing with modern medicine, like John Hopkins studies. MAPS has done more to progress psychedelic studies than really any other group to make it look legit, make it legit. So anyways, I'm with all these people and had this incredible experience that felt a little bit like a pinnacle. Like I'm doing Burning Man so well that I'm at the in the mayor's office or something. Right. I don't know how to explain it. But, you know, looking back, my first burn, I was a shit show. I was sleeping in a kid's tent, eating rotten eggs with hot sauce. I had all the drugs and none of the common sense. And by Wednesday, I was partied out. I remember being at burn night. I was like throwing up on burn night. I couldn't handle it. I was just, I had no serotonin or dopamine left. Everything was just disgusting.
That's interesting. Yeah.
But that was, in a way, one of my best burns, and a lot of my most amazing moments came out of the blue. I wasn't expecting it. My second burn may have been my best because I was just prepared enough. But I feel like over the years, I kind of have diminishing returns in some ways. And the way that I say it to myself, my own story, is that I have graduated. Enough of that. I've learned enough from it that now, like, because I used to like wear like normal clothes, and my Burning Man wardrobe was like really weird. And then slowly my wardrobe just kind of merged, and I just like, if I went to Burning Man, I'd be wearing this. You know what I mean? Because I know that the real shiny part is my personality and my art and stuff like that, or the way that I would behave at Burning Man was the way over here, and normal life was over here, and now I would act just like this is Burning Man. Yeah, it's like kind of like it's merged to me. So I've as they say, when you've gotten the message, you can hang up the phone. So I feel like I kind of graduated Burning Man. I don't feel the same urge to go back. What does interest me is going back to do projects and art with good people that I would love to work with. That's what I would like to do if I had the right reason. But yeah, just Burning Man. Wow, it's so changed my life. I just to give it all the praise it deserves. It was absolutely transformative.
I mean, I'm definitely in. I mean, you know, the big burns on my list for kind of someday. Maybe the immediacy isn't there quite yet for me, but Portal Burn, which by all accounts is kind of one of the cooler, funner regional burns from my understanding. And I love like the whole Rochester group and like Sheck and Josh and Cracker Jack and you know all those guys and really all the people that are part of CoZmic are it's just super fun, you know, and so it's I'm definitely sold and hoping to go back this summer too. In fact, we're talking about maybe setting up the time blender and sort of reconfiguring it to inviting other artists to. So the time blender, you'll recall, it's a hexagonal time machine thing. You go in one door, you push a button, you blast off, and then it directs you to any one of the other doors that then you can go through, and you're in a world. Yeah. Which when we staged it was in the Cherry Gallery, and we were able to kind of enclose each world, and there was a crystal cave and an enchanted under the sea thing and a professor's lab and enchanted forest.
Some dinosaur bones.
Yeah, well, that was Duncan's. What was that called? Oh, what was it called? But yeah, that was in the undersea. I think they call it the. It was supposed to be like prehistoric sea. Nice. With jellyfish and coral and stuff.
I remember Duncan. He's so sweet. Yeah, it really goes to show the people that are drawn to these spaces are so awesome. Yeah,
and I guess it's another thing about all of that is that everyone's got this different skill set. A lot of people tend to have a broad kind of jack of all trades skill set, but some people have specialties, and so you're like, okay, I need to attach this animatronic skeleton to the wall. I made the skeleton, but like, how do you can someone here? Like, I don't know how to mount. What's the best way to mount it? And then someone pops up and
I'll drill a hole.
Yeah, right. No.
I love doing this.
Yeah, but you know, and everything you need is there because but there's going to be someone that knows everything you need to know. Someone's going to know a piece of it.
Yeah, the resources are there. The things that you need are in the space. Like, you know, and that's how the big burns are too. It's like, even if your camp, maybe you don't have the right tool, if you're missing a socket, and you go over to your neighbor's camp.
Right.
And you made a new best friend or a new worst enemy. Who knows, but something's going to happen. It's everything turns into like this, you know, mission or this quest. And the build itself is like that. Like back to the bonds that you create, you forge through that process. Like you said, it's like, you know, man, we really need someone that can drill like 200 holes in this thing. And then you're like, I came here to drill. That's like my thing. And then they're like, wow, you are really good at drilling holes, Norm. And you're like, I love this. And by the end of the day, you're all sitting there maybe having your dusty buffet, having a cold drink, and you're just looking back, all of you together, looking at the thing that you built and feeling good about it, what you did for it. And then, you know, theoretically at Burning Man, there's the build thing, which is already so beautiful. You have so much fun building that by the time the doors open, you've already kind of had an experience.
Right.
And then if people come in and they're now enjoying what you've created, and you want to kind of poke around and watch and enjoy, maybe be there, and you watch other people enjoying.
Yes.
You know, and like you said with that workshop that you did, that was the Marry Yourself workshop, you had a cathartic, transformational experience in that. People have those kind of experiences in your art, with your art sometimes. And you may or may not witness. You don't know what's going on in their head.
Yeah, you know.
So I mean, you're providing something that's really invaluable.
Right.
You know, and that's really special.
Huh. Yeah, it's funny that's. So we brought the smell machine to Portal Burn. It was its sort of inaugural thing, and set it up next to the CoZmic Lounge tent, and so over the weekend I got to see different people interacting with it, and I mean there couldn't be a more engaged and appreciative audience probably anywhere in the world, I would think, than at like a Burning Man thing, where not only people are into it, but they're also naked and tripping or not, or just, you know, they might even be really stoic. And I actually saw like someone was getting a portrait, like a guy had one of those like old timey large frame cameras that you get under the thing, and you're like, say cheese, and in front of the smell machine. And I kept thinking like, man, it's so fun watching people interact with it, but then also like I don't even know what's going on when I'm not there. You know, I don't know if people are. But that was like a super rewarding piece of that, was to watch people and talk to them and see what they thought of the smell machine, and especially with the smells. People would guess what the smells are, and they were actually it makes 6 smells, and 5 of them were pleasant, but one was like a nasty smell. And so to see like, you know, people's reaction when they got the nasty smell and what they thought it was, and everyone had a different theory too, just wild stuff that I never would have thought it smelled like that, you know.
Well, the smell machine is interesting to me for a few reasons, because the idea of conjuring a smell is already interesting enough. Pushing a button and then getting a but also there's the olfactory component, where the way that your brain processes smell and what that can do for your memories and things like that, it's pretty unique. There's a lot there. I forget the actual numbers, but it's something like 200 times faster than other things. I think that's probably how I came up with the idea in the first place, because I know for me, I'm super connected to smell, and you know, the smell machine, obviously it has its actual function of how it works versus the story of how it works, you know. And my ultimate idea would be like conceptually that when you went up to it, it would produce smells that would be personally significant to you. Which of course there's no logistical way to do that, except you could pick a person, right, and say, for today, this is your smell machine, and there probably is ways you could do that. If you had like a terpene library
that would kind of swap smells in and out based on,
and then you have like a catalog that like, okay, 2 units of this, 1 unit. It's like mixing paint.
Like a mix of
it makes the color that you want. There's probably some kind of way you could do that. Okay, that reminds me of, now that we're talking about Burning Man, I'm like, let's talk about Burning Man. I was at this camp, and it was like, it's a little different but similar. And you walk up to this booth, and there's this guy up there, and he's like, all right. He's like, what can I do for you? I was like, because there's a lot of bars, you know. So yeah, we do this special, we'll make you your own drink. And just tell us what it's called. and then we'll make it for you. So I think I'd come up with like spicy space cadet. And this guy's back there. He's got all these weird ingredients, like all kinds of weird stuff. Like I was kind of scared to drink it. But at the end, he gave it to me, and it was just such a weird flavor journey. And he kind of did nail it somehow. I don't know. But it was so cool to think that this was like something that's never been made before, and it's just for you. And,
right.
You know, just because we all want to feel special.
Mm-hmm.
We all want to feel seen. We all want to feel catered to. So, in a way, I think Burning Man provides a lot of opportunities to for people to experience that, and also to give that,
right?
Which is an experience. And,
Yeah.
and the real pros know that's the best part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's a part of it. I'm looking forward to kind of exploring more, is like the gifting aspect of it. And you know, this particular thing, the smell machine, was kind of like more like the gift. But I love how there's trinkets everywhere, and like I wound up with a bunch of weird shell necklaces and stuff that I wore most of the weekend. And someone left I think about 2 pounds of weed just sitting on the bar, like, here's a gift. You know, there's stuff like that. It's just like, and people roaming. To me, it was the carnival-esque atmosphere too, of just there's roaming. At some point when I was standing at the smell machine talking with someone else, a guy came up with a headset and a microphone and was like, "Okay, we're here live with the, and who are you, sir?" And had the voice, like kind of Al Roker kind of voice, and I actually thought he was broadcasting at first, and was like, and I was talking to him, and then when I looked, I realized the microphone was just like a carrot, with like a piece of foam, and the headphones were just like ear protection things with the duct taped. And it was funny how it took me a full 5 minutes even to realize that,
Yeah, you're taking it all seriously. Like, sad, my mom.
But it was just so funny, and just imagine that guy and like hundreds of others were walking around doing that kind of thing all weekend. Just so entertaining. One place I walked by, a guy was just doing this pratfalling thing, falling down, and acting like he didn't mean to, and he'd get back up and then immediately fall down again. Right. And he did that for like 5 minutes, and I just stood there and just laughing like crazy.
Yeah.
And everyone else just howling with laughter, like watching.
He was
this
clowning.
Guy.
He was
giving
the gift of hilarity at his own expense. There's so many ways to give. There's so many ways to give, and everyone. I feel like Burning Man really does celebrate diversity, in the purest sense that there is, like you said, everyone has something to give, and even like what I find at Burning Man too, like not just at Burning Man, other festivals, like I'll be at a thing and there'll be that one guy who's just like kind of depressing or kind of weird, and he's not quite fitting in, and he's getting a cold shoulder. And I've always been someone who kind of like notices the underdog. I've felt like I was one in different ways and times. So I try to engage or whatever with people like that and help them feel included, which is another principle, is to include, actively include.
Right.
And then maybe like on Sunday or something like that, everyone's packing up and, oh no, the trailer's got a flat tire and they can't leave, and this is a certain disaster. Everyone's having a hard time with this now. And it's that guy who comes to the rescue, that guy that no one was, and he has his moment to shine. Which maybe I was playing guitar and you were building the smell machine. His time to shine was to change the tire on the trailer and save the day. And then finally now he's had his moment. And that builds a sense of, I guess the word is beyond inclusion is like belonging. Mm-hmm. To feel like you belong there, and that other people recognize you as such, and because maybe in the real world that's missing so terribly.
Well, I mean, it definitely is, and I guess there's probably a million reasons, but it's the lack of intentionality. Maybe the thing with Burning Man is that it's like you go in knowing there's these principles and everything's intentional and talked about a lot too. Like consent, I know was talked about constantly, and I thought, I think that was the thing going in, that I was like, well, I kind of had this thing of like, there are all these principles and it looks good on paper, but we'll see if people are really doing it,
Right.
Like I really had doubts that it was like, nah, I mean, people can't really be like sticking to it as much as, but it was, well, they were.
Consent culture, in some ways may have been more or less born in the Burning Man scene.
Yeah, it could be, and when you think consent, you think sex like immediately, but it's way beyond that. I think as far as just the idea of like making sure that that what you're doing is not an
Causing
unwanted thing or whatever. Which is that thing alone in everyday culture could be a pretty big deal.
Oh, consent.
I mean,
Our society, one of my friends who's a comedian has a thing she does called grape culture, which is code for rape culture. That we do live in like a kind of a rapey culture,
right.
like the way that we treat the environment and other nations and even our citizens. And it's like very non-consensual, so much is non-consensual, how it's baked in. And you're right, it is a powerful thing it's an awareness. Consent is an awareness.
Right. Well, yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, it's sort of like taking another person's perspective, I guess, and just, I mean, a lot of times I think you don't think about, like, even just there's so many ways in which you probably do things without a person's consent that you wouldn't even stop to think that you did that.
Right.
Unless it was on your brain and there were, like, things hanging up everywhere that said, remember consent, and like...
You're in the cafe and you just rip a big fart. No one else, you know what I mean? But there's the other side of it, which is just kind of like raw dog in life. It's just happening, and life emerges as it does emerge, and some things just happen. But yeah, like consent is something that can enhance your relationships and make relationships so much more fun, and I think it's actually needed in Burning Man spaces because there's also. You may or may not have seen this, and I'm not sure where Portal's at on the spectrum, but there can be some pretty belligerent, debaucherous spaces sometimes. And the more willy-nilly and wild and crazy and drug-induced it can get, and free it can get, and freely sexual, the more you need that kind of consent container just to keep it all going, keep it safe.
It seems like that's part of the point in a way that it seemed to me. And at Portal Burn, I actually didn't really, it seemed like, I mean, there's a whole section that's kind of like the adults only camp or whatever. But yeah, there really wasn't anything that jumped out at me as being like a thing that I wouldn't want my kid to see or that kind of thing, If anything, it was just weird, I mean, a lot of like nudity, but it's like nudity isn't really...
It doesn't equate to sexuality.
Exactly, yeah.
Hey, that's something else too. Is like back to the celebrating diversity. There's no wrong way to live or have fun, or if you're not hurting someone or whatnot. And there's a lot of flavors at Burning Man. Some stuff I've wandered up to on a dark night on a stroll by myself when I'm just high enough to get really freaked out, and then I'll think about it later and go, no one's getting hurt. They're all having fun. It's not how I want to do it, but. Maybe I am a little bit curious. I'll come back tonight and just like get a little closer and peek, some like bondage, spanking.
Right.
I love getting spanked. It's great. Or whatever, it's like, there's no wrong way to do it.
Yeah.
I just told it myself.
Yeah. Which is, it's kind of like a not a popular opinion in our culture, I think, that there's no wrong way to do things. I mean, there's definitely like a advertised correct way and an advertised incorrect way, and which is, I guess, why people really people that are into Burning Man are really into it, and it's like that. I can't wait till the next burn thing, and you really see how it's like it really is like I get to kind of step out of this rule, this expectation, this, and I don't know, it's like there's a lot of freaky people there that are freaky all the time. Right. And then there's people that are, they're like, working in some corporate
tech,
kind of
lawyers,
thing.
doctors.
that are probably wearing a suit. Well, I mean, there's a guy I met at CoZmic who was naked all the time. I think he's probably naked almost all the time when he can be. And when he, at the very end of the weekend, he had clothes on. I didn't recognize him. I really I did kind of a double take, which I never would have expected to see a person clothed and be like, oh, wait, that's,
Yeah.
And I thought
think that guy drives a car and has a house and has
right,
the whole nine.
and it goes to a job somewhere and obviously has to put clothes on, I would assume, at his office.
Depending on what he does, yeah.
Right, so it's kind of, you can see how it's a real release, I guess, for people.
Yeah. They call it like the default world when you're there, as if that's almost to say that it's not the real world and that Burning Man is the real world. And there's something to be said about that philosophically. It's like, this is how I see it, and I've heard enough about some of the founding principles of Burning Man, is like, you ultimately make your own rules in your life to an extent, and then there's the greater society. But you have your own little bubble, and then when you're with someone else and you guys agree that this is the rules, then that becomes even more of a kind of a stronger bubble. And you get 70,000 people out there making their own bubble that has a real perimeter to it, and they're all playing by different rules. The rules of reality start to change and bend and morph, and the way things work and happen, the synchronicities, the miracles, the coincidences that are just, wow, how did I run into you right now? Or can't believe we pulled that off, or whatever it is. Like, we needed a 2.5-inch T25, and so just happened to find one in his pocket and save the day, or whatever it is. That it starts to make you wonder about what is reality and what is possible. Because groups have an ability when you come together.
Yeah, that's interesting, and interesting to me in particular, because I'm a very sort of pragmatic person in a lot of ways, and traditionally haven't lended a lot of credence to magic or things like astrology and especially religion, but I've seen enough weird things happen to know that there's something something going on, and it always, the effect is always magnified. I feel like when art's involved, for sure, but when there's certain kind of gatherings of people, those kind of things happen. But even when I've been trying to get ready for this art show, and I'm like, there's a lot of synchronicity that happens just for me, just personally, of like a thing I was looking for, and I just walked to a box that I hadn't opened in months. It seemed like there's no reason at all it should have been in that box, or that I should have walked over to that box right then, and I opened up the box. I mean, this happened just the other day, and the thing I was looking for was just sitting there inexplicably.
Wow.
And that's happened, a bunch of times just in the last month or so.
It revs up around events and around outpourings.
It's interesting.
It's weird, almost like that it knows, like the universe knows that you're like doing that, and it's like, all right, like we're gonna help this guy out. He's like doing something good here, and how much of that is self-created versus what kind of other forces are at work? That's a great question. Right. But yeah, pragmatic is a great word. There's actually, I just discovered this whole like kind of philosophy around pragmatism. It's called pragmatism. And one of the base ideas around it is like, you measure things by their effect. If it has no effect, it does not deserve really to be measured. So you pragmatically like look at what works and what doesn't work, but that does not exclude things like magic, which is just another word for energy that you don't understand the way the effects of that work. Like it could be easily said that 200 years ago a cell phone could be magic, right?
Right.
Or a car or anything like that. It's like it's just misunderstood technology. But technology also goes into like the mind and the eyes, the power of group thoughts, and what can sound do, what can smell do, what can symbols do. There's like so much there. And it's like kind of a technology, and it used to be like more, in the old days, alchemist, spirituality and science were one. They were one field, and now we've been kind of
Yeah. Yeah, that's it's tricky. That's so tricky because it's like I don't. I do feel like if you go too far down either way, it's not good, really. And especially kind of more in the magic way. I think that when you start sort of, and especially if you're trying to rely on it, I mean, with this kind of synchronicity, I was talking about where you look for a thing and then it just presents itself. Is I feel like I've known people who. They're kind of like, oh, and they start to like rely on it. Like, well, I'm not going to worry about it, or I'm not going to put things into place to help myself organize things or whatever, because the universe will just present. And as soon as you do that, it like doesn't work anymore.
Right.
So it's like you have to have this kind of, wonderment, or, man, I like to think of things as like a state of grace, or like naivete or something, where you're kind of intentionally trying to put yourself in a state where even I was telling you about how before I came here today, I didn't want to look at any of your other podcasts because I didn't want to front load myself with any expectation or
start rehearsing things in your head before you get here, or whatever.
And I was kind of, I was a little nervous in a way of like, well, okay, we're just gonna sit down and have a conversation, and like, what if I just say something like really stupid, or like, or more like, well, what, like, I don't know what we're gonna talk about, like, how's the conversation gonna go, and like, while at the same time being like, well, it's a conversation, and it's going to, most conversations I have don't usually like fail. Is that even a thing? I don't know.
There's some that have more grace or more awkwardness or whatever, or more productive, or there's. But I like the heady stuff. This is like where I like to hang out. This is where I like to be. The things that we're talking about, your willingness to kind of look at the deeper meanings of stuff, and it's like there's this saying like. The wise man is the one who knows how little he knows.
Yes, I love that. Yes.
So, but you have to know at least some things to go down the road and to have the conversation. But then at the same time, it's just like leaving lots of room to be informed and to change your mind and stuff like that. I perceive you as a very open-minded person, which is really, A, it's powerful, and B, it's maybe not as common. I think people would describe themselves as open-minded more than they really are.
Yeah, I used to actually think of myself as very open-minded, and I don't as much now, I think, because I am a little more opinionated or set in my ways about certain things, but like at the same time, I aspire to be open-minded. I definitely, that's a good question, actually. Yeah.
I mean, in a way to say that you're not open-minded could be the open-minded thing to say, just because it's self-awareness.
Right. Yeah. Which I also don't think of. I think of myself as being not very self-aware a lot of the time, but yet aspiring to try to
self-aware. Doesn't mean that you're not. You see the irony? Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I'm better at that, and I do. Have a therapist and stuff that we talk about that exact kind of thing, and what comes up a lot is like curiosity about things and about mindfulness.
Yeah.
My therapist is actually kind of informed by Buddhism and stuff, and I think that's a really interesting. I haven't really studied Buddhism that closely, but what I do know about it really resonates with me. Of the idea of, for one, not knowing that you don't know a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And that the more you think you know, the less you probably do know. And if you think you're enlightened, you're definitely not enlightened.
Yes.
If you think you're not enlightened, you might actually be a little more enlightened than you maybe think you are, or not. But yeah, just this idea of sort of just trying to stop and check in with yourself and ask, like, okay, well, what am I feeling in my body? And that's a thing. The first time I ever heard of just the idea of bringing awareness to like my body physically and what's happening in it was super counterintuitive to me, and kind of still is.
Right.
I try to do it when I think of it, but most of the time I don't think of it. And especially in the moments where I really need to do it the most, you know. Like if I'm stressed out at home about something, and like, you know, the last thing I'm thinking of is like, okay, just stop.
Take a deep breath.
Breathe. Be curious about why this is happening, and you know.
Yes, my friend, absolutely, 1,000,000%. As you just said, I have also been really thankful for elements of information tools through the Buddhist teachings, most of which came to me through Alan Watts. I just love Alan Watts. I've been to some different meditations and been around it. But yeah, it's a technology in itself and a tool and a way of looking at the world. But like you said, there's the knowns, or the known knowns, the known unknowns, and then the unknown unknowns. Things that you don't know that you don't even know.
Right.
And there's a lot of that. Whole lot. Mostly that's what it is. We see 1/1,000,000th of the color spectrum. We hear 1/1,000,000th of the audio. There's so much information that we're not. There's neutrinos passing through the empty space in our atoms. You know what I mean? It's like we're in this, and most of the atoms are empty space anyways. It's mostly just a field of maybe awareness, some kind of cosmic mind holding it all together. So just to be like humbled at that and curious at that is a great way to go about life. I mean, I see that as the inner child being alive. The creative part of yourself is curious part of yourself. And
oh boy,
and it's a really, really brave thing to be curious. Because there's also a vulnerability to say that I don't know. Because how could you be curious if you already know?
Right, yeah. Well, and our culture does not celebrate curiosity, currently at least. I mean, it's just like, you know, I mean, this is one of the things I was writing about in these things that I'm trying to kind of struggling with formulating for the art show, was like, you know, I'm a person who will see a twig or something and just stand there staring at it for 5 minutes, you know, while I'm walking down the street. And people are, you know, that's like in New York City, it's like if you see something, say something, it's like, well, this guy's been standing there for 5 minutes just looking at the ground.
Right, the cops
call the police,
up,
you know. And, you know, I've never had the police called on me for doing that, but I've had people confront me and just, you know, not even on their property or anything, but just be like, what are you doing out there, you know? And the funny thing is, if you start to explain it to them, they don't actually want to know what you're doing.
Right.
They just want you to go away.
And stop doing that.
This almost this exact thing happened once. I don't think it was a twig, but it was something. And I started to explain what I was doing, and he was just like, just, you know, he was like, never mind, just, you know.
You're obviously
along,
not
kinda,
well or something like
yeah,
that.
And I was like, no, I actually wanted to explain this to you, and you don't, you're not actually interested, and, you know, you just wanted to chase me off and not, you know. But what would that have been like for that person to stand next to me and be like, hey, let's stare at this twig with me for a few minutes and, you know, see what happens. Maybe something, who knows, you know, maybe we would have become friends, or at the very least.
Be inspired?
Yeah, they might have been like, that has an interesting twig, and that makes me want to go make artwork with twigs. or not, or even just they just spent like 2 minutes
being mindful,
yeah,
having a moment, meditating on the twig. There's so much that you're touching on here it's ironic that you're talking about looking at a twig, and that, to me, there's so many deeper meanings here, but specifically the thing that people find that alarming. I've been psychedelic for a long time. I used to, when I was younger, I would take mushrooms at the golf course or at the beach, and I'd be looking at the trees, because the trees know each other and they're friends, and that's the mom tree and that's the dad tree. Oh, something happened to the little guy.
Oh my gosh.
You know, and I'm just like sitting there just going deep into the trees, not hurting a soul. And really, I think what I'm seeing is real and beautiful and substantial, and it's valuable.
Right.
I'm smelling the roses.
Yeah.
Figuratively,
okay,
I'm smelling the roses of life. But if anyone were to watch me for a few minutes and realize what's going on, I could be like very concerning.
Right.
Let alone if they heard what I was saying or what my thoughts were around this kind of stuff. But, we've all kind of trained ourselves to just like go right past life, and you're always going from this thing to the next thing. But all those things are just there to kind of to support life and enhance life. But what that's cost you, the hyper focus on that, is it's cost you the actual meaning of life itself, which is to stare at the twig. It's to just take it in and to see the beauty in it. And there's beauty everywhere. You don't need to go to the cinema, and I'm guilty of this too, but rushing somewhere, stepping on the twig that I should be looking at. I should slow down and enjoy the whole thing. But we have this hyper drive, which is just consumerism and caffeine and stress and anxiety that's just so everywhere.
Right. Yeah. Well, and parenthood too, right, is it focuses you more on that kind of thing of like oh man, it's like seeing these little moments that are, and you can't really describe them to other people, like oh, I just sat down and I looked at my kid and had this experience watching them play with a twig.
Kids love sticks. Kids love sticks. That's the ultimate toy.
But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Reminding you to slow down and just to be present and to play.
Yeah.
To make believe. To imbue the moment and the things that are in your space with the magic that you're wanting. Instead of to go look for it, you create it. Which is another Burning Man principle.
Okay.
It's not just to go chase the party, it's to be the party, it's to create the party, to be that abundant source of yeah.
And not even a party even necessarily, but just a thing.
In isness, you've got a kid to go see here.
I've got to go in 2 minutes.
So let's just do a little sign off here and talk about Glob and what Glob's been able to provide to us today.
I love it. This is my first time here today. I love it. I met Bob at a puppet show thing a few months back, and I mean, it's such a cool space, but I don't mean the physical space itself is super cool, but clearly, I mean, it's fostering what I found to be an amazing conversation and connecting, and connectivity. And I want to do this every week.
I definitely, there's so much more to talk about.
Yeah.
I didn't want to look at my watch because I didn't want it to end. I wanted to pretend.
Same. I was like, I should check the time, but and thanks. Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah. But
we'll do another one. Both of my last two guests here, it felt like it was going to be part of a series, and I actually would like to explore the model of reoccurring, because one of the things that Bob has expressed interest in doing here, and I guess you could call us creative partners to an extent, is that it's a co-op and a community and a place for relationships and for people to come get access to the tools and resources they need.
Okay.
Because it can be so expensive to get into media, and you don't need to own something that you're going to use a couple times or something, and we can all share. So, for anyone out there who's interested maybe in getting their hands on a camera or a mic, doing some audio, some video, reach out to myself, Bob, Norm, or Glob, and we'll maybe see you here sometime.
Yeah.
If you want to be a guest on the podcast, holler at me too. It's only $1,000.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to work that off over time.
Yeah, we talk about.
You got some holes that need to be drilled, or because
I do accept Bitcoin. Norm Scott, this has been a really fun conversation with you, brother.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, it's great.
Blessings, Matt. I guess we'll let you get back to your fatherly duties.
And run.
Thanks, everybody. Catch you on the flip.
Oh man.